All right, well, welcome you guys to this strange world of online learning, and really pleased to give this first presentation in Microsoft Access. And it's kind of an experiment for all of us, I know, in getting the software and computers and everything to you. I know it's been a little bit of a challenge, but here we are, and we're going to start Microsoft Access today. And just a couple need to knows for starters. I guess number one is why Access? Well, Access is a database program, and you are most likely going to be going into a career field which involves some sort of data. That could be, say, you want to be a diesel mechanic, you want to be a beautician or an architect or a scientist or a doctor or whatever. You are going to be working with data. If you're going into anything sales related or you want to have your own business, you are going to be using a lot of data to analyze, make decisions, and so on. And so I know the teachers at community college told me last year, they said, well, are you teaching Microsoft Access out there at College Place? I said, yes. They said, we're glad to hear that because we really think that's an important part of our curriculum here. So to get started today, I'm hoping that you are able to split your screen with the video and your access screen. Might even consider maybe having your cell phone or another computer side by side, if that's even possible, next to your screen. But you do need to have some version of Microsoft Access, preferably something that is Office Professional 2013 or later. I guess one of the beauties is Access really hasn't done a whole lot of updates in the last 6 years as Microsoft has moved through their various software upgrades. So again, you will need Access, and hopefully you have a copy of the handout. Either you've printed out the PowerPoint sheet, which is on mine is 6 pages front and back. Otherwise, again, you'll have to figure out how to get a copy of that. I can email that as well. I will have posted that in Google Classroom. But getting an actual hard copy that you can follow along with might be challenging. And if not, if you don't have a copy of it, it's not like horribly critical. You can pretty much follow along with this video. For starters, we need to get into Access. You could go to your file menu down here in the bottom left, or we could just go down here to our Ask Cortana and go and search and go find Access. And I'm going to go in and open Microsoft Access here from scratch, and we're going to get going here. All right. So when you first open Access, it asks you, what do you want to do? Well, you can see there's a bunch of templates, very similar to Word, of various tables you can load. And I'll get into what I mean by tables and fields and records here as we move along. But for now, let's just go down here and click on Blank Database. I'm just going to click on that once. And Access is kind of strange because it tells you in advance, asks you in advance where you want to save this. I'm going to call this CMF Vets. I'm saving that to my Documents folder. You just need to take a note of where on your computer you're saving that file. Maybe you have a special place you want to create a Documents folder in your parents' or your home, your family computer or something like that. But just make a note of where you've saved that file. And I would suggest you create that folder to keep your school stuff separate from the rest of your family. So when we say create a blank database, we'll talk about all the various things that are inside of a database. That might be multiple tables. That might be what's called a query, which we're going to get into next chapter. That could be a report or a form. All kinds of different elements could be contained inside of a database. So I'm going to hit Create. And just a brief little orientation. First of all, we have our task pane over here on the left with our various objects in it. And again, an object could be a table, an object could be a report, that kind of thing. We have our regular tabs up here at the top, and you're familiar with main level tabs from our previous travels in Microsoft. Down here we have kind of our work area. And I guess the thing to start out with is you are going to get very familiar with this tab right over here, the View tab. And primarily, different objects have different types of views, but primarily you're going to be toggling back and forth between this protractor looking thing, which is called Design View, and I'm going to click on that. And it's going to ask me, well, what's your table? Okay, what is my table? My table is going to be called Owner. And I'm going to click on OK. I'm going to pause right there. So I'm creating this table called Owner. Owner will have a bunch of different information in it. And I should go where I was demonstrating here. We have Datasheet View. You see the little, it looks like an Excel worksheet up there. I click on that. This is where I would do actual data entry into my table. If I click back on Design View, this is like the guts, or think of this as like the frame of your house where you're putting up studs and you're putting up framing of like a room. You haven't put up the walls, the electricity, or anything like that. You're just doing the framing. This is where we're going to create essentially the guts, or the bones, I guess I should say, the bones of our table. And I think you remember enough from Excel Chapter 6 to remember when we talked about fields, we talked about little pieces of data about maybe a person or a company or whatever. So for example, in Skyward, you guys have first name, last name, middle initial, your class schedule, any special needs you have, your academic history, your grades, your attendance, your parents' names, their cell phone numbers, your address, their home phone number, your parents' cell number. You have fields and fields and fields, probably hundreds of fields of data in Skyward which describe you. And that, all those little pieces of information called fields make up one record. So each of you has a record in Skyward with your name, your student ID, and all that information about you. All those little pieces of data called fields make up a record. So here in Design View of our table, and I'm at the bottom here of page 1 on the handout, creating this table called Owners, I'm going to create the bones of my table. I'm going to create the field names. So I'm going to start out with my first field name is going to be Owner ID. By the way, you can stop this anytime. You can rewind it. You can go back. You can do whatever. Owner ID is going to be the name of my first field. And I'm going to hit Tab. And it says, well, what's the data type? Well, auto number is something where it would automatically add 1 every time you added a record. I don't want to do that. I want to have my own owner ID name. And so this is data that I'm going to input. So I'm going to hit the drop down arrow. Instead of auto number, I'm going to say this should be a short text field. Short text is 255 characters or less. All right. And over here in the description, because maybe I might forget, what's that field all about? What am I doing with it? This is totally optional. I'm going to say I'm doing some sort of a pet shop here. All right. Actually a veterinary clinic. It's funny because I had a veterinarian over for breakfast this morning that visited our house, and I was kind of nervous because she was looking at our cat like, does she think our cat is sick or something? She's a vet. She was just enjoying looking at the cat. Anyway, the description of this field is going to be unique pet owner. And again, if you can't type very fast, don't worry about it. You don't have to keep up with me here on this typing, or you can pause the video and type it in yourself. I move on to page 2. And again, I'm building the bones of this table. The owner ID down here in my field properties, I don't need it for it to be 255 characters wide. I'm going to run my mouse pointer through 255 down there in my field properties, and I'm going to say it's only going to be 5. Field size of 5. And then caption is what you might see when you run a report. This will show up at the top of the field name instead of owner ID. I'm going to shorten this and say capital O, underscore, ID. So it's kind of like a pseudonym or an alias, if you like, of that field is a caption that would appear at the top. All right. So we're done with owner ID for our first field name, our first little piece of data. I'm going to go up here and click on the second row below owner ID, and you will see periodically what says create a table in Datasheet View. Datasheet View, again, is where you enter the data. And that is one skill that I really don't even want to show you because I think it's extremely harder and more difficult to create a table on the fly in Datasheet View. Just go into Design View, pull up the framework of your house, so to speak, start putting in studs rather than trying to do everything on the fly. Okay? All right. So below owner ID, I'm going to type in first name. Would be nice if I could type, huh? First name will be my second field in my owner table. All right. I'm going to hit tab, and you'll notice that the data type defaults to short text. It's a smaller version of text. All right. And I'm going to run my mouse pointer down in my field size to that 255. I really only need this to be 50 in field size. All right. And then I'm going to click below first name. Now I'm going to add a whole bunch of fields, and I'm on the middle of page 2 on the left, and I'm going to add 8 more fields. I'm going to add last name, tab, call this short text. I'm going to make last name, run my mouse pointer through my 255, I'm going to make it 50. Click below last name. Next one is street. I'm going to make it a short text field. And for now, I'm going to just leave it at 255. I want to leave a lot of room for my street field. So we have, we're creating some data here about the owners of our pets for our vet clinic here. Below street, I'm going to put city. That too will be a short text. And I want to make it a length of 50. Below city, I'm going to put state, short text. And in this case, I'm going to use a 2-character postal abbreviation for my state. So I'm going to make my field size only 2. And again, when I say field size, that's a maximum width that we can put, or the maximum amount of information that we can put into a field. Next, below state, I'm going to put in postal code, i.e. your zip code. I'm going to make that 9 field size. Click below postal code, put in home phone. Short text, I'm going to make it, again, running my mouse pointer. Guys, remember when you highlight something and you type over the top of it, what happens? Yes, it replaces it. I'm going to make this 25 for my home phone. Mobile phone. Just like I got your mobile phone data last week, run my mouse pointer through that. I'm going to call this 25. And then finally, email address. I'm going to make this 50. All right. Now, just stop right there for a second. I have created my first table in Design View with 10 fields, 10 little pieces of data. And all these little pieces of data together will create information about one owner, which we're going to call a record. All right? Okay. So here we go. I'm going to, it says to close the owners table. Well, I'll go ahead and just play along here. Close the owners table over here with my little X, right? So do I want to save the changes? You bet. That sounds great. Okay. And now I have one object over here called the owners table. All right. Now I'm going to start doing some data entry here. If I double click over there on the owner table, it's going to automatically open it in Datasheet View where I enter information into my table. Again, a review. If I click up here on my little protractor thing, it's going to open it up in Design View, or the bones of my table. If I click again over here on the far left, it'll take me back to Datasheet View. Now to create just a little bit more room for the time being, I'm going to close my shutter bar. If I see that little double arrow there, I'm just going to click on that, and it makes it just a little bit bigger room here to enter data into my table. Okay? So I'm going to click right in my first record. I'm going to create my first owner record. All right? And remember, we created that caption up there, O_ID. So that's what appears there in my first field. And I'm at the bottom of page 2. I'm going to type in capital O-1, tab. And then I'm going to type in a bunch of stuff here. Let's see. We have Ted is the first name. Sabus is the last name. He lives on 460 West Pioneer Road in Dolores, Colorado. 81323 is the zip code. I'm hitting, by the way, I should have said this, I'm hitting tab between each field, hitting the tab key. Phone numbers, 719, this would be his home phone, 231-4411, tab. Again, I'm entering all this information, bottom right of page 2, 719-888-7735 is his mobile phone. Email address is tsabus@newmail.com. Now, I'm going to pause just a second. I just typed in a whole bunch of stuff, and you're probably like breathless, like, Reardon, slow down, calm down. I know you're excited. Okay, so I just typed in my first record. Now, there's people that do this for a living, by the way, and you can enter that data in as you're watching here. There's people that do this for a living where all they do is data entry all day long for companies and stuff like that. But you know who does a lot of the data entry now? You do. Because you go onto a website and you sign up for stuff and you enter in your information, and that company captures that data. Alrighty. So there's our first record, and we're on to page 3 here. Alright. And we're going to enter some more information. I'm going to go down to my next record, and we're going to kind of cheat here and pull in some data. All right. Now, I'm going to have to pause here for a second because you are going to have to go find your cheater data for Chapter 1. I would have included that in Google Classroom. I should have had you open that up earlier. Get that in Google Classroom. So I'm just going to pause the video here a second, or maybe I'll just go out and find it here myself. But you're going to have to load that Excel file that has that cheater data in it. So let's see here. I'm just going to keep right on rolling here. You might want to pause the video if you need to go out and find where that data is. But let's see here. Chapter 1 files demo. And the file that you're looking for is something called Chapter 1 cheater data. Chapter 1 cheater data. It looks like we got a support file that we might be pulling up here really quick as well. Chapter 1 cheater data. Make sure you open that. And if you're having a hard time finding that, or you have to go back to Google Classroom, I suggest that you pause the video before we continue on here. All right? So I'm assuming at this point you have the cheater data in front of you. Now, rather than us go in and do all this data entry, which we might be here for the next hour, putting in, 7 more owners, we're going to use a shortcut here. And you have to follow along very carefully. And if this doesn't work, you might need to go back and fix it or something like that. But here in Excel, Chapter 1 cheater data, starting in cell A2 with owner ID 0-2, I'm going to use my white cross. And I'm going to highlight everything from A2 through J8. Now, aren't you glad you know something about it? Microsoft Excel now. A2 through J8, don't select the header row, just the data. And we know what we copy with Control C. I can just hear Gavin saying Control C. Thank you, Gavin. All right, so Control C, we highlight our data. Now don't get ahead of me here, please. You're going to be very sad. I'm going to go back to Microsoft Access where I'm pulling the data in. And if I'm going to copy some data into my table, I need to click directly on, you might call it the star, but the asterisk over here. I'm going to click directly on it, like so. Now be very careful here. When I click on the asterisk, it lights up and puts a border around that entire row. Now this doesn't work the first time. You can try it again. All right. And I'm going to bring in that data. All right. And I'm going to paste it. And I just brought in 7 records. Isn't that awesome? All right. So you're about to paste 7 records. Are you sure you want to paste these records? We use the term, I'm going to use this periodically, we use the term append. I'm appending records, or I'm adding existing records into an Access table. I'm appending records. Do I want to paste these in? Yes, that's 7 records coming in. All right. And then it's saying, well, do we want to like resize some things? Well, that sounds good. And kind of like Microsoft Excel, and I may be deviating at the top of page 3. I may be deviating from my instructions on the sheet a little bit. But see between owner ID and my first record in here, kind of like Excel, there's a little triangle. You can just barely see it right there. Click on that, and it will select your entire data table. All right. Now I want to do autofit. If you remember, autofit makes each column just a little bit wider than the entries in that field. It looks like my street information is kind of cut off. So I'm going to select all of my data, click on that little triangle. So again, just kind of barely see it up there. Put your mouse pointer between street and city and get your crosshair up there. And then double click. And because you had your entire table, just like Excel, like we did in Word tables as well, because you had all your fields selected, it should auto-fit all your fields at once. So now you can see all your data for your 8 different owners for your vet clinic. And again, I just want to say, you're probably thinking, I'm never going to go into veterinary medicine. Well, great, but just think about a field that you're going into, a career path you're going into, and what kind of data might be in that particular field. And again, also too, this is a little bit hokey because for demonstration purposes, we're using just a little bit of data. But most companies have hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of records that they're dealing with every day. All right. So I'm going to hit the little X over here to close this owner table. And it says, do you want to save changes to the layout? Yes, I do. That sounds great. And now we have an owner table with data in it, and everything kind of goes blank on us. Let's go click up here on our double-headed arrow, our shutter bar. Click on that to open up so we can see our objects, which of course so far all we have is our owner. And I want to create another table. All right. So I'm going to go up here to my Create tab. I'm going to say Create Table Design, because again, I suggest whenever you create a table, start with the bones or the framing of the house before you put any data in. Table Design. All right. Takes me right into Design View. I'm middle right, page 3, and I'm going to create a table with 5 fields in it, 5 little pieces of information. I have the patient ID. Now we're talking about dogs, cats, whatever. They're the patients in our vet clinic. All right. Hit tab. It defaults to short text. I can just hit tab, tab. Takes me to another line. Patient name, Fluffy. Tag, Spot. I don't know. Patient name. We're going to keep that at short text, which is our default. We're not changing any field widths yet. Hit tab a couple times. Animal type, whoops, let's spell that right, Reardon. Animal type, and again, stop me whenever I get typed too fast. You can just slow me down a little bit, pause the video, and do your own typing. Animal type, short text, hit tab a couple times. Breed, short text. Again, I just hit tab twice. And owner ID, short text. All right. All right. Back up to patient ID. I want to add what's called a primary key. A primary key is something you use to make sure that information doesn't get duplicated in your table. And when you select a field as the primary key, that means usually that, as you can see down in your field properties, it says duplicates okay, but sometimes you might say you don't want any duplicates at all. It's also a method that Access uses to sort your data. All right. So for example, what is your primary key at College Place High School? What's the one piece of information about you with data that nobody else has? You might say my social security number. Well, if the social security number is even in there, maybe it is. I don't know. But of course, the one element or piece of data about you is your 7-digit code, 03 whatever, which you were assigned the first time you walked through the doors. Okay? So we're going to assign a primary key to our patient ID field. Notice I went back up there and clicked on patient ID. And so that now cannot be duplicated. All right? And I'm going to switch views here. I'm going to go from Design View, the framing of my house, clicking on the Datasheet View tab. And it goes, oh, well, you need to save the table. Well, let's just go ahead and do that. And it asks me, what's your table name? I'm going to call this table Patients, also known as Animals. Patients is my table name. And as soon as I save this table and it switches me from Design View to Datasheet View, you'll see that now over here in my task pane, I now have two tables, owners and patients, within my whole database file up here at the top called CMF Vets, which is the name of my company. All right. Well, you know what? Do you feel like typing a whole bunch of stuff here today? I don't. I really don't. So I'm assuming you still have your Excel file open. Let's go back and click on our Excel file, back to our cheater data. And you can see down here at the bottom in my sheet tabs, aren't you glad you know something about Microsoft Excel now? Again, here's my Owners tab. Let's click on our Patients tab down there. And one more time, I want to highlight everything except for the field header row. So I'm going to select my white cross, starting in A2, left click and hold. I've got Pause, Ranger, and Fluffy. Oh, goody. Anyway, I'm going to highlight A2 through E4. A2 through E4, that range. Control C. Get your marching ants around that. All right. And again, slow me down, stop me if you need to. I'm going to switch back to Microsoft Access. All right. I still am in the, see how I had owner selected, but I still am in the patients table up here. All right. And again, click right on that asterisk, that star, click right on it to select the entire row. In this case, it selects everything, doesn't it? All right. If you do anything else, if you try to click in there and try to paste, it's going to be all weird. Click right on the asterisk, hit Control V to paste in. It says, oh, you want to add 3 records. That sounds great. I want to add 3 records. We just saved all that typing. All right. And I might add too, if you have problems copying and pasting data, you might need to go back and check your spelling. And where maybe you misspelled some stuff, or you didn't put the right lengths in or whatever. So if you're having issues pulling my data in, it's because you misspelled something or you changed field widths or something weird happened to prevent that from happening. Click on the Yes button up there, and you just added 3 records into Patients. I'm on to page 4. And it says double click the right boundary of the field selectors of each of the fields. Well, let's not do that. Let's just go up here and click on our little triangle up there. I don't think we really need to do much anyway, but click on your little triangle between patient ID and the first row to select your whole table. Then again, like Microsoft Excel, put your mouse pointer between one of your 2 of your field names. I'm going between animal type and breed, and getting my crosshair there and double clicking. And it's going to auto-fit everything to either the widest entry in my records, or it's going to make it as wide as the field name itself. Okay? And I can save my changes by hitting the Save button up here in the upper left-hand corner in my Quick Access toolbar. Save. And then little x over here to close out my patients table. All right? And there we go. Okay, it says next, right, page 4. It says copy the database file, support AC, CMF, vets, dexterous tables from the data files, and save it to the storage location specified by your instructor. Well, this is if we were all accessing the shared folder together, which we obviously aren't, but I'm just going to do that anyway, just in case I show this video in the future. You would have that file in your supplemental files. I have it out here on the shared folder. And I guess for demonstration purposes, I'm going to right-click on that support AC file. And by the way, if you're kind of getting freaked out a little bit right now, really all we're doing so far is stuff you're fairly familiar with from your travels in Microsoft Excel. We worked a lot with data in Excel. We did some things that we're going to be doing later on in Access, which are very similar. Excel is kind of a poor man's database. You can do some things data-wise in Microsoft Excel, but in Access you have way much more flexibility and power to handle large amounts of data. So I'm going to right-click and copy this file from the shared folder to what? To something. To my documents. Maybe I'm just going to put it down here somewhere. Paste it down here. All right. Support. Okay. And I'm going to open up, once I've pasted that, again, you can pull it off of Google Classroom and put it on a folder. Again, I suggest you have your own little folder on your family computer to keep your stuff separate. I'm going to open that up. All right. And then every time you open up Access, you might need to click on Enable Content. Do I want to make this file a trusted document? Do not ask me that again. Yes. All right. And again, don't freak out if you're using something like 2010 version. You can still follow along with the presentation. I think if you do have 2010, rather than doing short text, I think you're limited to just the text field type. It's close enough. You can still do projects too, by the way. All right. And so I'm going to open that file, Enable Content. Now I'm going to sneak back down to my task pane. And notice when I put my mouse down on my task pane, it shows me both of my Access files. And I'm going to go over here back to my CMF vets file. And now I'm going to do an import. And once again, you did imports in Microsoft Excel, so this is something, again, you're familiar with. So this is largely a review. Click on the External Data tab up there at the top. And you're going to say New Data Source, over there on the left. And you're going to say From Database, Access. I'm pausing here. Here again, we're specifying where that file is. You probably saved that to your, mine defaulted to Documents. That's where I saved my Access file that I brought in, that support file. And you might need to browse out and find out where you actually saved that. Right now it's open down here as well. Okay. And so I've got it defaulted to the right place. It says import tables, queries, forms from the current database. That sounds into the current database. That sounds great. All right. And I'm going to go browse out here. I'm in my documents file, but I need to specify I'm looking for that support AC file. So I got to tell it which file I'm bringing in, which is my support file. Again, you may have put it in a slightly different place. Import tables, queries, so on from this existing file. Click OK. It says, what do you want to bring in? Well, let's see, what do I want to bring in? It says we want to select all. We want to bring assortments, treatment costs, and veterinarians, all three tables, into our existing database. So I clicked select all and then OK. And do I want to save my import steps? And no, I don't want to save the import steps. I'm going to hit close. And ta-da! We just added appointments, treatment costs, and veterinarian tables from that support file that we had out there. So we brought in stuff from another Access database into our current database. All right? You might need to pause here. If you had some issues with that, maybe replay the video before you try it again. Replay the video, go back and do the steps, and try that all over again. And if you have issues at any time, Mr. Reardon, I'm stuck, I didn't get it, whatever, send me an email, especially during the school day. Believe it or not, they're paying us to be at school right now, and I'm here to answer questions for you. All right. So here comes our first query in Microsoft Access. I'm middle right, page 4. And a query is just simply saying a slice out of a data table. We could be taking a slice of just a few of the fields, or a few of the records, or a combination of both. So for example, let's take Skyward. Let's say I want a list of all of the sophomore boys in our school. Maybe I'm doing some sort of recruiting, or there's some recruiting for some sport or event, or there's some grant being given to sophomore high school boys. I don't know. Think of all the fields of data about you. That you have all those hundreds of fields about you, name, first name, last name, your parents, all that stuff. But let's just say I want to get first name, last name, and I just want sophomore boys. So I got first name, last name, gender, and grade. I'm going to only look for 4 fields. And of all the students at our school, I'm going to do a query and just pull out those that are male and grade 10. That would be a query out of Skyward. In fact, I was just doing a query yesterday. All right. So I have the owner table in my list of objects. Just highlight. You don't have to open it. Just put your mouse pointer. Just click once on what you want to do the query on. In this case, it's going to be the owners table. And I'm going to go up here to my Create tab. And we're going to do this a lot in Chapter 2. I'm going to say Query Wizard. Query Wizard. And again, when we say wizard, we're saying something that's going to basically hold your hand and walk you through how to do something. Query Wizard. I want to do a simple query wizard. We'll get into crosstabs, maybe a duplicates, unmatched is something I'm not sure I've ever used much. Simple query wizard. Click OK. It says what fields. Again, make sure you have the right table selected. Yes, owner table. That's what I'm doing my slice out of. Again, I'm middle right, page 4. Which fields do I want to select? Well, I want to do first name. So I'm going to highlight first name and hit my little single arrow over here. And then last name pops up. I'm going to hit single arrow over here. I'm going to add street, city, state, postal code, stop. I just added 6 fields to my query. Hit next. Make sure you have those same fields. Okay. What do I want to call this? Well, it says it wants to call it owners. So I'm going to put an S up there. Was I supposed to call it the owners table or not? I guess I was supposed to call it the owners table. I have owner over there. If you have the owners table, you can rename it later. I'll show you how to rename it back to owners here in a second. Owners query, and it says open the query when you're done, and click finish, and ta-da! You have 6 records, excuse me, you have 6 fields and all of the records of your owners, but you don't have all of the fields, just a few of them. So you took a slice out of a data table called owner, and you created something called the owner's query, which is a piece of that table. That was your first query. All right. Let's see here. I'm going to close that out with a little X. And again, if you called that owner instead of owners, I want to fix that. So I'm going to come up here to my tables called owner and right-click. This is the learning opportunity. Right-click and say rename. Click on the end and just put an S on that. Owners. You can rename any of your table objects or any of your objects for that matter at any time. So I'm just going to click off somewhere and call that owners. All right. So again, I got owners created. I'm going to create something called a form. Now, if you ever looked over your nurse's shoulder while you're at the doctor's office, you see all kinds of forms on the screen. And we're going to create a simple form for our owners table. I'm just going to go up here to my Create tab and select Form. And there is my form. Now, I want to make sure that I'm in what's called Form View. I'm going to hit the drop-down arrow. And I'm going to switch from Layout View to Form View. So in this case, with forms, you've got 3 different views instead of 2, like we did with table. When I switch to Form View, you can see down at the bottom it says I'm on record 1 of 8. It has all of my fields up here and all of my data. So instead of having our Datasheet View, where you see all your data at once, here we're looking at 1 record at a time, kind of like you would in real life with various customers or patients or stuff like that with the business you would be operating in. Okay, and I'm off to page 5 here. And if I want to navigate through, see this little single arrow down over here? I could click on this next record button, and it would take me to the next record. And I could click on that again. That goes to record 3 of 8. I could go to record 4 of 8. I could click on this arrow to the right where it says last record, where it takes me to the end. I'm not going to do this now, but if I wanted to, I could even go and add a new record here with what I call the sunshine button over there. But in this case, I'm going to click back on my first record, the left arrow with the line next to it, to take me back to that first record. All right. I'm going to hit the Save button here in the upper left-hand corner in my Quick Access area. And I want to call this Owner's Form. And OK. So now I have an object called an Owner's Form. I'm going to close that out with the little X over there. All right. So we've created a query based on our Owner's table. Very simple one. We've created a simple input form based on our Owner's table. Finally, we're going to create a report. So with Owners selected, we're going to say Create up in our tabs. And I am going to say, I want to go to the Report Wizard. Create Report Wizard. Once again, this will walk you through step by step. First of all, make sure you're doing your report from what you want to do it from. It says I'm starting with the Owner's table. That sounds great. Okay. So we're going to start dropping in fields into our report. I'm going to do first name. Hit the right arrow. And then it drops down and shows last name. I'm going to hit right arrow and add that to my selected fields. Once again, like I did before, street, city, state. I'm not going to add a postal code, just state. First name, last name, street, city, state, zip. Maybe I'm going to be creating some sort of a mail merge, something like that. And I'm done selecting fields, so I'm going to hit next. And it says, do you want to group on anything? I'm going to group on state. And I'm going to hit the right arrow key. So essentially, all of my stuff is going to be sorted by state in my report. And I'm going to hit next. Do I want to add any sort records? No, I don't want to do any sorting. How do I want this? I want this in stepped layout, and it kind of gives you a model of what that's going to look like. And I want to keep this as portrait orientation or straight down the page. Sometimes because our reports get so big, we do them in landscape or sideways. It says leave the adjust the field width so the all fields fit on the page checkbox checked to instruct access to display all the fields on a single page. Great. Next. And it says, what do we want to call this? I want to go up here and call this owner's report. And we want to preview the report when we're done here. Finish. And scroll down. And I just created my first report. Notice it's grouped on 2 states, Colorado and Utah. And inside of Colorado, I have 4 customers. And there's their names and their addresses. In Utah, I have 4 customers. Simple report. You just created your first report. Notice that my report name shows up here at the top of my report in my report title. All right. I'm going to hit the little X over there on the right. Notice that I've added a object called owner's report. I got owner's query, owner's form, owner's report. Now that I've figured out that I've named owners correctly. Now, you may periodically make sure that, because your data for your business, your data is so critical. It is so important. It's so valuable. If you lose your data for your business, it could be very bad for you. So periodically, you may need to back up your information. Save it somewhere off-site, post it online. A lot of companies have automatic database backup systems that happen every night in case their building burns down. But Access kind of has a feature where you can do that manually too. I'm going to go to File, also known as, yes you guys, Backstage View. File, Save As. And what do I want to do? I want to save my database as, that's correct. I want to back up my database down here. Then I'm going to do a Save As. Probably going to default to my documents, which it does. And notice that it has the name of my file, CMF Vets, and today's date. Yes, I did this on Sunday, March 15th. That's what so the backup is date stamped. Click Save. I'm going to go back here and click on Enable Content. So I just created a duplicate copy of my database. And again, a database has all of these objects in it. Tables, queries, forms, and reports. Page 6, home stretch. Finally, as you work in a database, things can kind of get scattered all over your computer. Your computer has a hard drive, and when you save a file, it kind of scatters stuff all over the place. There's a feature in Access called Compact and Repair, which pulls all of your pieces back together to make sure they're kind of all, I want to say, like huddled together on your hard drive. You can look up back or compact and repair on your own if you like. But you want to do this every time you're essentially done with like a project in SAM before you turn it in for grading. You always want to make sure you do compact and repair just to make sure there's no loose ends hanging out on your database. So I'm going to go to my File button, also known as Backstage View. I'm just going to say Compact and Repair Database. And you can see that I had that wheel going for just a second. So that process just took a moment. And ironically, the very last slide there talks about renaming an object. And you and I did, guys, quite by accident. I demonstrated to you that earlier because I did not name owners correctly. And again, if you don't like any of your object names, you can always go back and right-click on them and say rename if you want to call them something else. Okay. So that is the end of the demonstration for Access Chapter 1. You will now want to go into SAM and go to SC Practice Excel Chapter 1. And rather than just having the nice lady Denise talk to you about that stuff, I think what I'm going to do is I will have another one of these videos available to you to support the various questions in SAM. And I'll just go through them one at a time. This will be on a separate file. But I'll just go through those one at a time. So if you have struggles on any of those particular questions, you could go back and open up my instructional video and review the question that you're struggling with. Maybe I'm better than Denise. Maybe I don't have the nice voice as she does, but I'll try. Thanks again. And again, if you have any questions, email me. You could call me at school, whatever. I want to make sure I'm available to support you. And again, SC Practice Excel Access Chapter 1. Here is your next step. Thank you for joining me.